My hands froze mid-slice through the anniversary cake. The candlelight flickered between us as David's words hung in the air. I've fallen in love with another woman. 28 years of marriage. 28 years of putting him first. And here we were, on our anniversary, with those words between us. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, I did something that shocked us both. I smiled and I clapped. Slow, deliberate applause that echoed through our silent dining room. Congratulations, I said. You finally learned what it feels like to actually feel something. My name is Melissa Parker, and at 56 years old, I finally discovered who I was. But let me start at the beginning. 3 months before that, anniversary dinner that changed everything. I sat by the window of the community art studio on Maple Street, mixing blue paint on my palette. The color wasn't cooperating today. I picked up the brush, set it down, picked it up again. Without realizing it, I sighed one of those deep sighs that comes from somewhere you didn't know existed inside you. 28 years of marriage, 2 grown children who'd built their own lives, a lifetime spent supporting David's career as a financial consultant, raising our kids, keeping our home in perfect suburban order. The weight of it all had started to feel heavy, like a coat. I'd worn so long I'd forgotten I was wearing it. "Mom, how was your painting class today?" My daughter Sarah's voice came through the phone, bright and cheerful as always. "Good, honey. We worked on landscapes today. The instructor said my use of color was really developing." I smiled despite the frustration I'd felt moments before. "That's wonderful. You know, seeing you take up painting, it makes me happy. You seem different, lighter somehow." Sarah was right. I had started just 3 months ago, right after both kids moved out and established their own lives. Sarah was in Boston now, working for a tech startup. Michael had taken a job in Chicago. The empty nest had hit me harder than I expected. At first, painting was just something to fill the endless hours. But when I held that brush, something shifted. For those few hours each week, I existed as just Melissa, not David's wife, not Sarah and Michael's mom, just me. The studio was in an old converted warehouse, with high ceilings and natural light pouring through industrial windows. About 15 of us met there twice a week under Patricia's guidance. Patricia was in her early 70s, with wild gray curls and paint-stained fingers that told the story of a lifetime devoted to art. "Don't overthink it, Melissa," she'd said earlier that day. "Feel the color. Let it speak to you. Let it speak to me." What a concept! For most of my adult life, I'd been too busy, listening to everyone else's needs to hear my own voice. On the drive home through our tree-lined suburb, I stopped at Whole Foods. My cart filled automatically with the usual items, the ingredients for David's favorite beef stew, the organic vegetables he preferred after his last physical, the artisan bread from the bakery section he liked on Fridays. Even grocery shopping had become automatic, a routine I could perform in my sleep. I grabbed a bottle of wine, something I'd started doing recently. A small indulgence, a glass with dinner, while David watched his financial news programs. "I'm home!" I called out as I pushed open the front door of our colonial house. We'd lived here for 23 years, raised our kids within these walls, painted and renovated, and made it picture perfect. David sat on the leather couch, tie loosened, shirt buttons undone, flipping through channels with the remote. He didn't look up. The evening news murmured in the background. "What's for dinner?" he asked, eyes still on the TV. "Beef stew. Your favorite." "That again? Can't you make something different for once?" I paused in the kitchen doorway, reusable grocery bags still in my hands. The complaints were constant, but he never suggested alternatives. just criticized. What would you like instead? I asked, keeping my voice even, pleasant. Never mind. Just make whatever. He waved his hand dismissively, attention already back on the screen. This conversation, or some version of it, had repeated itself for years. I couldn't remember when it started. When did we stop talking and start just existing in parallel? David came home from work exhausted, claiming his job drained him. The house, the kids, everything domestic that was my domain. Even when Sarah and Michael were small, childcare fell entirely to me. David believed earning the income was enough. That was his contribution to our family. I'd had a career once, too. I'd been an elementary school teacher before Sarah was born. I loved it, the creativity, the energy of children, the satisfaction of watching young minds grow. But when Sarah came along, we decided, or rather, David had suggested, and I'd agreed that I should stay home. At least until the kids are in school, he'd said. Then Michael came along 2 years later, and somehow, until they're in school, became until they're in middle school, and then, well, they still need you at home. By the time they were teenagers, I'd been out of teaching for so long that going back felt impossible. My teaching certificate had lapsed. The education world had moved on without me. As I chopped vegetables for the stew, carrots, celery, onions, I thought about what Patricia had said that morning. Art is about revealing your true self, not for others, for you. It's purely for yourself. Why had those words struck me so deeply? Maybe because I couldn't remember the last time I'd done something purely for myself. The stew simmered on the stove, filling the kitchen with rich, savory smells. I set the table, poured myself a glass of wine, and called David to dinner. He came, checking his phone as he sat down. We ate in relative silence, the clink of silverware on plates the only sound. David, I said finally, do you know what today is? He looked up from his phone, confused. Thursday? I mean the date. Do you know what today is? Silence. I watched recognition slowly fail to dawn. It's our anniversary. 28 years. David's face registered surprise, then that familiar guilty look. Oh, right. Sorry, I completely forgot. It's okay. I just remembered this morning when I looked at the calendar. That wasn't true. I'd known for a week. For 28 years, I'd remembered our anniversary. Every single one. In the early years, David would remember too. He'd bring flowers, make reservations at nice restaurants. But over time, the gestures had faded. The last few years, it had fallen entirely to me to acknowledge the date. This year, I decided to see if he'd remember on his own. He hadn't. Want to go out to eat? David offered half-heartedly, glancing at his half-finished stew. No, I've already cooked. Let's just eat at home. Besides, I got something special. From the refrigerator, I pulled out a small cake I'd picked up from the bakery down the street. Nothing fancy, just vanilla with happy anniversary, piped across the top in blue frosting. I'd ordered it 3 days ago. Thanks, David said, managing an awkward smile. But there was no warmth in it, just the mechanical response of someone going through the motions. I lit the candles, not birthday candles, but the tall tapers. We kept in the dining room cabinet and sat across from him at our cherry wood table. 28 years ago, when I was 28 years old and he was 30, I'd imagined our marriage so differently. We'd been young, hopeful, full of dreams about the life we'd build together. I'd pictured us growing old together, really together, sharing dreams and adventures and deep conversations. This wasn't it. This was two people sharing space, but not lives. David's expression suddenly shifted, becoming serious. Heavy. The kind of look that precedes bad news. Melissa, I need to tell you something. I stopped cutting the cake, knife suspended over the frosting. His tone frightened me. Was someone sick? Had something happened at work? I've fallen in love with another woman. Time stopped. The words echoed in my head as I stared at his face. Another woman. After 28 years together. He was telling me this on our anniversary. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight. But then, something unexpected happened. Instead of the crushing pain I would have expected, I felt something else entirely: clarity. All those years of putting myself second, all those dreams I'd deferred, all those times I'd swallowed my own needs to make room for his. And now, he'd fallen in love with someone else. Something inside me cracked. But instead of shattering into tears or rage, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: free. I started to laugh. A quiet laugh at first, then growing. And then, slowly, deliberately, I began to clap. The sound of my applause filled our silent dining room. Slow, steady, deliberate. Congratulations, I said, still clapping. You finally learned what it feels like to actually feel something. If you're enjoying this, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring you more stories about life, wisdom, and the courage to change. Now, back to Melissa. David's face went pale. This wasn't the reaction he'd expected. He'd probably imagined tears, maybe screaming, perhaps dishes thrown against walls, dramatic scenes like in the movies, the stereotypical reactions of a betrayed wife. But applause? That had never entered his mind. Melissa, what are you doing? His voice trembled. I'm clapping. After 58 years on this earth, you finally experienced real love. That's worth celebrating, isn't it? I kept my smile steady, my voice calm. Inside, something had unlocked not heartbreak, but clarity. Crystal clear clarity about what I needed to do. David studied my face intently, searching for signs that I'd snapped. Was this shock? Was I in denial? Was I testing him? But my expression remained serene, almost peaceful, like I was discussing the weather or commenting on a book I'd read. So, tell me about her, I said, resuming my cake cutting as if we were chatting about his day at the office. She's a Pilates instructor at the gym near my office. He stumbled over his words. How old is she? 30. I nodded slowly, processing this. 26 years younger than my husband. Young enough to be our daughter. And when did this start? About 3 months ago. 3 months. I paused, the knife hovering over the cake again. Right around when I started my painting classes. Interesting timing. David's confusion deepened with every passing second. Why wasn't I reacting? Why this eerie calm? Maybe I'd never loved him at all. Maybe I had someone else too. Maybe I was plotting revenge. The thoughts played across his face like a movie. Melissa, are you really okay? I'm fine. Actually, I'm relieved. I took a bite of cake. It was good moist, with real vanilla. For 28 years, I wasn't sure if you actually loved me. Now I have my answer. He had no response to that. My words were true, and he knew it. What he'd felt for me wasn't love, it was habit. Comfort. Familiarity. In the beginning, maybe there was genuine affection, even passion. But time had eroded it into mere routine. We'd become roommates who shared a last name and a mortgage. So what happens now? David asked awkwardly. I sipped my tea slowly, chamomile with honey, the way I liked it, then set down the cup and looked him directly in the eyes. I think we should get divorced. Now it was David's turn to freeze. Divorced? Wait, I wasn't. I wasn't planning to ask for a divorce. That's when I understood completely. He'd wanted both worlds: a stable wife at home, maintaining his comfortable life, and an exciting young girlfriend on the side for adventure and validation. The best of both worlds in his mind. Have his cake and eat it too, quite literally, given the anniversary cake between us. Hold on, divorce seems extreme. Let's think about this, he stammered. I've had plenty of time to think, I said calmly. 28 years, actually. I just didn't have the courage until now. But when you told me you love someone else, everything became clear. Crystal clear. But what about the house? What will Sarah and Michael say? We'll figure out the house. It's just a house. And I'll tell the kids. Don't worry. I paused, meeting his eyes. Since when did you care so much about family anyway? You've barely been present for years. David felt reality slipping away from him like sand through fingers. He'd expected to confess, maybe have me beg him to stay, promise to change, work through his mistake together. Maybe some tears, some anger he could weather, then eventually forgiveness and a return to normal. Instead, I'd taken complete control of the entire situation. Melissa, is this really what you want? To throw away 28 years? I'm not throwing anything away. It was already gone. We just didn't know it yet. Or maybe we did know it, but we were too comfortable, too scared to admit it. I stood up, suddenly exhausted. I'm tired. I'm going to bed. The dishes can wait until morning. As I walked toward our bedroom, soon to be just his bedroom, I felt lighter than I had in years. Behind me, David sat alone in the dining room, stunned. 28 years, ending on our anniversary night over cake and tea. Could it really be this simple? I didn't sleep much that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation. Part of me expected to feel devastated, but instead I felt possibility, like a door had opened that I hadn't even known was there. The next morning, David found me already dressed and preparing breakfast as if nothing had happened. French toast, his Sunday favorite, though it was Friday. I contacted Sarah and Michael, I said casually as I flipped the bread in the pan. They're both coming this weekend. David's hand froze halfway to his coffee cup. You already told them? I said we needed to have a family discussion. I'll explain the details when they're here. Melissa. David, my mind is made up. We can do this amicably, or we can do it difficultly. I'd prefer amicably, for everyone's sake. Throughout that week, David tried several times to restart the conversation, to reconsider, to negotiate. But each time I remained firm. Something fundamental had shifted inside me. That moment when he'd confessed his affair, it hadn't broken me. It had freed me. I went to my art class that Wednesday with a strange energy. Patricia noticed immediately. Melissa, you're glowing today. Something good happen? I made an important decision, I smiled. About my future. Tell me about it. I'm getting divorced. Patricia's eyes widened, but then she smiled knowingly. And you're happy about it. I am. Terrified, but happy. Is that strange? Not at all. Sometimes endings are the most important beginnings. That afternoon, I worked on a new painting. Without planning it, without thinking, my brush created a woman. She was standing with her arms raised, hands together, clapping. Her face radiated joy and liberation. Not the fake smile of someone pretending to be happy, but genuine, from the soul joy. That's powerful, Patricia said, looking over my shoulder. What are you going to call it? I didn't hesitate. Finally. Finally. Finally free. Finally myself. Finally alive. When Sarah and Michael arrived that weekend, the tension in our house was palpable. David looked nervous, pale. I felt calm, centered in a way I hadn't experienced in decades. Sarah came through the door first, her long, dark hair pulled back, concern etched on her face. "Mom, Dad, what's going on? You sounded serious on the phone." Michael followed, tall like his father, worry in his eyes. "Everything okay?" I poured tea for everyone. Sarah liked Earl Grey. Michael preferred green tea. David took his black. Funny how I knew everyone's preferences so intimately. We sat in the living room, the four of us, like we'd done countless times over the years for family meetings about school, about college decisions, about life plans. But this time was different. "Your father and I are getting divorced," I said clearly, calmly. Sarah's face hardened instantly. Michael looked at David with confusion and disappointment written across his features. "Dad, is this true?" Michael's voice was quiet but heavy with emotion. David could only nod, looking down at his hands. "How could you?" Sarah's voice cracked. "After everything Mom's done for this family? For you?" "Sarah, don't be angry," I said, touching her hand gently. "I'm okay. Actually, I'm better than okay." "How can you be okay? You've been married 28 years. "I am. Really? This is exactly what I need. What we both need, honestly." Sarah stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "Mom, did Dad do something?" I looked at David, giving him the choice. He cleared his throat. "I met someone else," he admitted quietly. The room went silent. Michael's jaw clenched. Sarah's eyes filled with tears not for her parents' marriage, but from anger at her father. "How could you?" she whispered. The kids struggled to understand my reaction. Where was the devastated, heartbroken mother they expected? Where was the woman who'd fall apart, who'd need them to pick up the pieces? Instead, they found someone calm, collected almost. "Happy?" "Mom, are you in shock?" Michael asked gently, studying my face. "Sometimes people go into shock and don't react right away." "I'm not in shock, honey. I promise. I've actually been thinking about this for a while. I just didn't have the courage to do anything about it until now." "You've been thinking about divorce?" Sarah looked shocked. "Not consciously. But looking back, yes. I've been unhappy for years. I just accepted it. Told myself this was what marriage looked like after decades together. But that's not true, is it? Marriage shouldn't feel like... I searched for the word. Like going through the motions. Sarah looked at me carefully. Really looked at me. Perhaps for the first time in months. The painting classes I'd mentioned. The new brightness in my face during our video calls. The confidence in my voice. The way I'd started wearing makeup again. Styling my hair differently. Buying clothes that weren't just practical. I'd been changing all along, and she was just now seeing it. "If you're happy, Mom, then I support you completely." Sarah squeezed my hand. "But Dad, I'm really disappointed in you." Actually, disappointed doesn't even cover it. David couldn't meet his daughter's eyes. Michael said nothing at all, but his silence spoke volumes. The disappointment radiating from my son was almost palpable. "I'm sorry," David said quietly. "To all of you. I made a mistake." "No," I corrected him gently. "You didn't make a mistake. You told the truth. Maybe for the first time in years, you were honest about what you were feeling. That's not a mistake. What would have been a mistake is continuing to pretend." That evening, the kids stayed with me. We ordered pizza, something we hadn't done as a family in years, and Sarah looked through my recent paintings on my phone. "Mom, these are incredible," she said, scrolling through image after image. "You did all of these in 3 months?" Patricia says I'm a natural. Or maybe I'm just finally doing something I'm passionate about. Michael peered over her shoulder. Who's this woman you keep painting? The one clapping? That's me. Or who I want to be. Who I'm becoming. Why is she clapping? Sarah asked softly. Because she found her freedom, I smiled. The kids exchanged glances. In that moment, I think they finally understood. This wasn't a tragedy. This was a transformation. Over the following weeks, I changed in ways that surprised even me. I started waking up early, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I'd go for walks in the neighborhood, really seeing it for the first time in years. The old oak trees lining our street, the gardens my neighbors tended, the world I'd been living in but not truly seeing. I started wearing makeup again, not every day, but when I felt like it. I bought new clothes, things I actually liked instead of what was practical or on sale. I got my hair cut shorter, with layers that framed my face. At 56, I'd spent so long trying to be invisible that becoming visible again felt revolutionary. I met up with old friends I hadn't seen in years. Karen, who I'd taught with before Sarah was born. We met for lunch at a bistro downtown, and she barely recognized me. Melissa? Oh my God, you look amazing. What's your secret? I'm getting divorced, I said, and we both laughed at the absurdity of it. Good for you, she said seriously. I remember how you used to talk about David. Even back then, I wondered if you were really happy. Had it been that obvious? Had everyone seen what I couldn't? I joined a book club that met at the local library every other Tuesday. I signed up for a weekend watercolor workshop in the Berkshires. I started saying yes to things I'd always said no to because they conflicted with David's schedule or preferences. David watched this metamorphosis with growing discomfort. The wife who'd been content to stay home, to be invisible, to orbit around him and the children, had become someone he barely recognized. "Where are you going?" he'd ask as I headed out, dressed and energized, keys in hand. Lunch with Karen and some other teacher friends. Then we're going to check out that new art supply store in Hartford. When will you be back? I'm not sure. Don't wait up for dinner. There's leftover lasagna in the fridge. He seemed genuinely unsettled by my independence. For 28 years, I'd been a fixed point in his universe. Now I had my own orbit, my own gravitational pull. At the art studio, my work flourished. Patricia pulled me aside one afternoon after class, her paint-stained fingers holding one of my canvas boards. "Melissa, you're progressing incredibly fast. Your technical skills are good, but it's your emotional expression that's extraordinary. Especially these clapping woman paintings, they're powerful. Raw." I'd painted the same subject over and over, but each version felt different. Sometimes the applause was triumphant, arms stretched high. Sometimes it was quiet and satisfied, a gentle acknowledgement. Sometimes it was fierce with determination, defiant against the world. "Patricia, I'm thinking about having an exhibition," I ventured, my heart pounding. 6 months ago, I never would have had the courage to say those words. "Really? Melissa, that's wonderful. Your work is absolutely ready for that. Do you have a venue in mind?" "There's a small gallery on Main Street. I walked by it last week and thought, maybe. Let's go talk to them. This week. I'll come with you." Planning the exhibition gave me purpose beyond anything I'd felt in years. Every day I went to the studio, worked on new pieces, refined older ones. I met with the gallery owner, a woman named Rebecca in her 40s, with kind eyes and an infectious enthusiasm for local artists. We planned the show for late October, giving me 2 months to prepare. I met other artists through the gallery, attended openings, joined conversations about technique and vision, and what it meant to create. For the first time since my early 20s, before marriage and children, I felt part of something larger than my domestic life. Meanwhile, David continued seeing Jennifer, his Pilates instructor, but he'd stopped mentioning her. The affair had lost its shine. Part of the excitement had been the secrecy, the transgression, the thrill of doing something forbidden. Now that I knew and didn't seem to care, the whole dynamic had changed. "You seem distracted," Jennifer said one evening over dinner at a restaurant 30 minutes from our town, far enough that they wouldn't run into anyone David knew. "Just work stress," David lied, pushing his pasta around his plate. "What did your wife say when she found out about us? Was there a big scene?" David hesitated. How could he explain my reaction? "She took it calmly." Too calmly. Too calmly? Isn't that good? I mean, it makes things easier, right? "I don't know." It's like she's relieved. Like she was waiting for an excuse to leave. Jennifer studied him across the candlelit table. She was beautiful, young, fit from teaching Pilates 5 hours a day. But she was also perceptive. "Do you still love her?" she asked directly. "I don't know. I think I just got comfortable. And now that comfort is gone, I feel lost." "What are we doing then, David? Am I just your midlife crisis? Your escape from a bad marriage?" He couldn't answer honestly because he didn't know himself. What had started as exciting and new now felt complicated and exhausting. A week later, Jennifer ended their relationship. She was only 30, but she was smart enough to know she deserved more than being someone's escape fantasy. David found himself alone, watching his wife bloom into someone new, someone he'd never really known. The gallery opening arrived on a crisp October evening. Autumn had painted our Connecticut town in brilliant oranges and golds, and the air carried that particular scent of wood smoke and fallen leaves that always made me nostalgic. I'd spent weeks preparing, hanging my paintings, designing the simple catalog Rebecca helped me print, writing artist statements, something I'd never imagined doing, sending invitations to everyone I could think of my art class, old teaching colleagues, neighbors, book club members, even some of David's work friends, whose wives I'd stayed friendly with over the years. The theme of my first solo exhibition, The Clapping Woman. 15 paintings, all variations on the same subject. A woman applauding. Each piece captured a different shade of the same emotion: liberation, joy, determination, relief, defiance, peace. All the feelings I'd experienced in the journey from that anniversary dinner to this moment. Sarah and Michael arrived early, bringing flowers. Sarah carried a huge bouquet of sunflowers, my favorite, though I'd never told her. Somehow she'd remembered from years ago. "Mom, this is incredible," Michael said, walking slowly through the small gallery space. "You did all this?" "Every single one," I said, feeling a swell of pride that was entirely new to me. "You did this. You really did this." Sarah's eyes were bright with unshed tears, happy tears this time. The gallery filled quickly. More people than I'd expected. Patricia came with several other students from our class. Karen brought 3 other teachers from my old school. Rebecca, the gallery owner, greeted everyone warmly, directing them to the wine and cheese she'd set up on a table at the back. And then David arrived. He stood in the doorway for a moment, dressed in a dark suit, carrying a modest bouquet of roses. He looked uncomfortable, out of place, but he'd come. "Congratulations," he said quietly, handing me the roses. "Thank you for coming." He walked slowly through the exhibition, stopping at each painting. The clapping women, all versions of me, all different, stared back at him. Free! Unbound! Alive! No longer the woman who'd waited up for him, worried about his dinner preferences. shaped her life around his needs. "Excuse me," a woman I didn't know asked, standing before the largest painting. "What's the title of this one?" "Finally," I answered. "It's beautiful." So much emotion. "What does finally mean?" I smiled. "Finally free. Finally myself. Finally alive. Take your pick, they all work." David overheard from a few feet away. The words hit him visibly. His shoulders sagged slightly. A blogger from a local arts and culture website approached me, young woman with purple streaks in her hair and an enthusiastic smile. "Hi, I'm Jessica from CT Arts. Would you have a few minutes for a quick interview?" We sat in a small alcove at the back of the gallery while she recorded on her phone. "So, Melissa, when did you start painting?" "Earlier this year, in January, after my kids moved out, and I suddenly had all this time and space to myself." "Your work is quite distinctive." All these women clapping. What inspired this theme? I thought about that anniversary night. The candlelight. David's confession. The moment my hands came together in that slow, deliberate applause. It represents the most important moment of my life. When I found my authentic self and decided to celebrate her. When I chose myself. That's powerful. Your artist statement mentions you're going through a divorce. Was that part of finding yourself? Yes. Sometimes endings are actually beginnings. I realized I'd spent nearly 3 decades being who others needed me to be: wife, mother, supporter, caretaker. Those roles are important, and I don't regret them. But I'd lost Melissa somewhere along the way. These paintings are about finding her again. What would you say to other women who might be feeling invisible in their own lives? I paused, choosing my words carefully. I'd say you're never too old to start over. Age really is just a number. Dreams don't have expiration dates. The life you want is waiting for you, but you have to be brave enough to reach for it. I started painting at 56. I left my marriage at 56. I'm having my first art exhibition at 56. Everything I thought was over was actually just beginning. Jessica smiled and stopped the recording. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. As the evening wore on, people circulated through the gallery, wine glasses in hand, conversations humming. Several people asked about purchasing paintings. Rebecca handled the inquiries professionally, placing small red dots next to 3 pieces that sold that night. 3 paintings, 3 pieces of my soul that resonated enough with strangers that they wanted to take them home. The validation felt incredible. After most guests had left, just family remained. Sarah hugged me tightly, fiercely. "I'm so proud of you, Mom. So incredibly proud. You inspire me." "Thank you, sweetheart. That means everything to me." Michael stood looking at, finally, the largest canvas for a long time. Then he turned to me with tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom." "For what, honey?" "For not seeing how unhappy you were. For just assuming you were fine because you always seemed fine." I pulled him into a hug. "You have nothing to be sorry for. I didn't even see it myself for the longest time. We're all learning." David approached hesitantly after the kids had stepped away to help Rebecca clean up. "Melissa, can we talk? At home?" I nodded. The car ride was quiet. We'd barely spoken beyond logistics in the past month. Lawyers were involved now. Papers were being drawn up. The house would be sold, assets divided. 28 years reduced to spreadsheets and signatures. At the house, still technically our house, though it hadn't felt like ours in a long time, we sat across from each other in the living room. The same room where we'd told the kids about the divorce. "I've been an idiot," David said without preamble. "A complete and total idiot." "Yes, you have been. I never appreciated you. I never saw who you really were. No, you didn't. But to be fair, I wasn't showing you. I wasn't showing anyone, including myself. Can you forgive me? I considered his question carefully. Forgiveness. What did that even mean? I can forgive you, David. I already have, actually. But that doesn't mean we go back to how things were. Why not? I ended things with Jennifer. I see now what I lost. You lost me years ago, I interrupted gently but firmly. You just didn't notice. And honestly, I lost myself too. But now I've found her again, and I'm not giving her up. Not for anyone. Melissa, I forgive you, David. I really do. You gave me an unexpected gift that night. Your confession was the push I needed to change my life, but we're still getting divorced. That hasn't changed. His face fell, but he nodded slowly. You're really not coming back. No, I'm moving forward. I moved out 2 weeks after the exhibition. Sarah took the day off work and drove up from Boston to help. We worked together in comfortable silence, packing my things into boxes. 28 years of marriage, and somehow it all fit into the back of a U-Haul trailer Sarah had rented. Are you scared, Mom? Living alone for the first time? Sarah asked, as we taped up the last box of kitchen items, just the essentials I'd need. Scared? No. Excited. Nervous, maybe. But not scared. I smiled at her. At 56, I'm finally going to have my own space. Entirely my own. Do you know how incredible that feels? I think I'm starting to understand. The apartment I'd found was perfect for me. A one-bedroom in an older building on Elm Street, just 3 blocks from the art studio. Hardwood floors, high ceilings, and most importantly, enormous windows that flooded the space with natural light. Perfect for painting. This is really nice, Mom, Michael said, helping carry boxes up the stairs. He'd driven in from Chicago, taking a few days off work to help with the move. It's mine, I said simply. Every inch of it is mine. David had wanted to come help with the move, but I'd told him no. This needed to be just me and the kids, a new beginning without him in it. We spent the afternoon setting up. Sarah hung curtains. Michael assembled the small dining table I'd bought at IKEA, my first furniture purchase as a single woman. I set up my easel by the window, arranged my paints and brushes on the small desk I'd found at an estate sale. By evening, the apartment felt like home, not the house on Maple Street where I'd raised my children. This was different. This was mine. You should get a cat, Sarah suggested, as we sat on the floor eating takeout Thai food from containers. Or a dog. Company. Maybe. But right now, I'm enjoying my own company. David called that evening after the kids left. I stepped out onto my small balcony to take the call, looking out over the quiet street below. How's the new place? He asked. Perfect. Exactly what I need. The house feels empty without you. I didn't respond. What could I say? That was his reality to deal with now, not mine. Take care of yourself, David. You too. And Melissa, thank you for everything you did for our family. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. Goodbye, David. After we hung up, I stood on that balcony for a long time, breathing in the cool October air. Freedom smelled like fallen leaves and possibility. My new life began to take shape quickly. I established routines that were entirely my own. I woke up when my body wanted to wake up, usually around 6, drawn by the morning light. I'd make coffee exactly how I liked it, strong, with just a splash of cream, and sit by the window, watching the neighborhood come alive. I painted almost every day, sometimes at the studio with Patricia and the other students, sometimes alone in my apartment. The clapping woman evolved. New subjects emerged. I started a series of birds in flight, wings spread wide, soaring toward endless skies. Patricia called one Tuesday morning, her voice excited. "Melissa, there's a regional art competition next month. You should enter. The theme is transformation." Me? Compete against real artists? You are a real artist, Melissa. Stop selling yourself short. I decided to submit finally the large canvas of the woman, with her arms raised in triumphant applause. It felt right. That painting captured everything about my transformation. The weeks passed in a blur of creativity and discovery. I took a pottery class on Saturday mornings. I joined a women's hiking group that met every Sunday at different trails around Connecticut. I went to the movies alone, something I'd never done before, and discovered I enjoyed it. I had coffee dates with new friends from my art class. I reconnected with more old teaching colleagues. I went to book club meetings and actually finished the books. I existed fully in my life, instead of watching it pass by from the margins. The regional competition results came on a Tuesday morning. Patricia called, practically screaming into the phone. "Melissa, you won second place! Second place in your category!" I sat down heavily on my couch, phone pressed to my ear. "What?" "Finally took second place. There's a $500 prize, and you'll be featured in the New England Arts Quarterly." That evening, Sarah and Michael drove in to celebrate. We went to my favorite Italian restaurant, a place I'd discovered on my own, walking around my new neighborhood. "Mom, you're incredible," Michael said, raising his wine glass. "Seriously, you left Dad, started a new life, won an art competition all in less than 6 months. Sometimes you just need the courage to take the first step," I said. "Everything else follows." Sarah leaned over and hugged me. "To Mom, the strongest, bravest woman I know. To new beginnings," I added. The divorce was finalized on a cold December morning. We met at the courthouse, David and I, with our respective lawyers. We signed papers, shook hands awkwardly. The judge stamped documents. 28 years ended with bureaucracy and ballpoint pens. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt snowflakes landing on my face. The world looked different somehow. Sharper, more vivid. Like I'd been seeing everything through a fog that had finally lifted. I drove straight to the art studio and painted for hours. The bird painting was nearly complete. A hawk, or maybe an eagle. I wasn't concerned with ornithological accuracy soaring against a brilliant blue sky. Free, unbound, going wherever it chose. That evening, I met Rebecca and some other artists from the gallery for dinner. We talked about upcoming shows, about technique, about how to price work, about the local art scene. These conversations fed my soul in ways I hadn't experienced in decades. "You seem genuinely happy," Rebecca observed as we walked to our cars after dinner. "Like truly deeply happy." "I am," I said simply. "For the first time in a very long time, I am." 6 months after that anniversary dinner, my life was unrecognizable. I had a small apartment filled with art and light, a growing reputation as an emerging artist, friendships that nourished me, children who respected and admired me, and most importantly, I had myself back. My name is Melissa Parker. I'm 56 years old, and I'm finally truly free. Some people ask if I'm angry at David. The answer is no, not anymore. He gave me an unexpected gift that anniversary night. His confession was the catalyst I needed to reclaim my life. Without that moment, I might have continued sleepwalking through another 28 years. I don't regret our marriage. Those years gave me Sarah and Michael, 2 incredible human beings I'm privileged to call my children. The marriage taught me patience, resilience, and eventually, self-worth. But if I could give advice to other women, or anyone feeling invisible in their own lives, it would be this: you are never too old to start over. Age is just a number. Dreams don't expire. The life you want is waiting for you, but you have to have the courage to reach for it. I started painting at 56. I left my marriage at 56. I won my first art competition at 56. I discovered who Melissa Parker really is at 56. 56 was when my real life began. So if you're waiting for permission, consider this it. If you're waiting for the right time, that time is now. If you're waiting for courage, know that courage doesn't come before action. It comes from taking the first step despite your fear. 3 months after the divorce, I received an invitation to exhibit at a prestigious gallery in Boston. My Clapping Woman series would be featured alongside established artists in a show called Voices of Transformation. Last week, I heard through Sarah that David had started dating someone new, someone age-appropriate this time, a woman in her early 50s who worked in his office building. I sent him a text, "I'm happy for you." Truly. And I meant it. Yesterday, I sold my largest painting, yet a commissioned piece for a corporate office in Hartford. The check was enough to cover 3 months of rent and supplies. And this morning, I woke up in my sun-filled apartment, made my coffee, and stood at my easel beginning a new piece. Not a clapping woman this time. Not even a bird. This time, I painted a self-portrait. Melissa Parker, age 56, looking directly at the viewer. Not smiling, not frowning. Just present. Confident. Real. I'm painting the woman I've become. The woman I always was, underneath all those years of being what everyone else needed. The title came to me as I worked Melissa, because after 56 years of being someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone's mother, I finally know exactly who that is. Patricia stopped by my apartment that afternoon to see the work in progress. She stood quietly for a long time, studying the canvas. "That's your best work yet," she said softly. "You've found your voice." "I have, haven't I?" "What's next for you, Melissa?" I looked around my small apartment, my sanctuary at the paintings leaning against walls, the easel by the window, the life I'd built from scratch. "Everything," I said. "Everything is next." And I meant it. At 56, I wasn't ending anything. I was beginning everything. The woman in my anniversary, painting the one, clapping, she knew something I'm only now fully understanding. Sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is applaud your own courage. Celebrate your own liberation. Honor your own truth. That night, standing in my kitchen making dinner just for me, I found myself smiling. Then, without really thinking about it, I started to clap. Slow, deliberate applause, just like that anniversary night. But this time, I was clapping for something different. Not for an ending. For a beginning. For Melissa. Finally,